Hello, King. You're not what I expected.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought you'd only be 12 inches tall.
And why would that be?
Because you're a ruler. We've got a soaking wet king for you this week.
He must be a reigning monarch.
The King of Cups represents the highest authority in the suit of water and someone who has mastered their emotions. As with all the core cards in the suit of cups, this relates to compassion, but we're taking that to the highest level here. The king can represent someone who is very emotionally supportive and has found the perfect balance between their head and their heart. In the key to the tarot, Arthur Waite says he holds a short scepter in his left hand and a great cup in his right. His throne is set upon the sea. On one side a ship is riding, and on the other a dolphin is leaping. The implicit is that the sign of the cup naturally refers to water, which appears in all the court cards. He's really dishing out the big secrets there. I don't know how we'd have figured that out. Anyway, we've obviously got some symbolism running through this card. We see ships in quite a few tarot cards. Very often they can represent an adventure, or a passage along a spiritual journey. The leaping dolphin represents creativity, but it's important to note that both of these symbols are in the background, still there but somewhat separated from the king and his duties as a ruler. Rachel Pollack says, like the King of Wands, he represents his suit in terms of social responsibility, accomplishments and maturity. And like the Fire King, his position as maintainer of society does not fit him all that comfortably. So we've got this idea that the responsibilities of being a king don't necessarily suit the concept of flowing water, and the emotional or creative aspects that can represent. She goes on to say, in its extreme, the imagery suggests someone who has dammed up his or her emotions and imagination. In Barbara Moore's excellent little book of tarot, she points out that that can lead to a kind of tension and release cycle. She says the King of Cups understands and controls his own feelings. These controlled emotions can sometimes burst out in unexpected ways. She goes on to talk about the difference between controlling and suppressing our emotions, and how important it is to find a sweet spot between these two concepts. We want to be in control of our emotions, but at the same time we also need to be able to express and connect to them. Going postal is a term you may be familiar with. It's not just an exceptionally good book by Terry Pratchett, but it's also a term used to describe someone bottling up their emotions to the point where they manifest in fits of rage. That's obviously an extreme example, but you get the idea. The Strength and Temperance cards are worth bringing up here. The whole thing about having the mental fortitude to quiet the mind, but also being able to keep our actions and emotions in perfect harmony. In the Thoth deck, we've got the Knight of Cups in this position. Waite and Crowley still doing everything they can to confuse us with their naming conventions. Anyway, check him out. The knight and his horse both hurtling through the air on the crest of a wave. Crowley says he's clothed in black armour, furnished with wings, which together with the leaping attitude of his white charger indicates that he represents the most active aspect of water. Now I don't know if I'm going colourblind, but that definitely looks like bottle green armour to me. Anyway, he's brandishing one of our little crab friends in his cup. He goes on to say, in his right hand he bears a cup, from which issues a crab, the cardinal sign of water, for aggressiveness. So at first I assume that the card must correspond to the Cancer Zodiac sign, but that's not the case, and I'll get to why that is later on in the video. If we look closely, we can see we've got a little peacock sitting in the bottom right hand corner. This is another throwback to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Milo Duquette says, like most of the chord cards, Harris's version respectfully contains all the major features of the Golden Dawn model, including a most beautiful and subtle peacock that seems to be fashioned from a plume of pure water created by the wake of the night movement. The Sforza Marseille cards are staying true to the straightforward formula, although the Marseille King's Cup looks like it would come in handy as a form of self-defense. Ow! He's also going for the position of the most elaborate crown in the tarot, and that's going up against some pretty stiff competition. Look at the size of the thing, it's got to be a royal pain in the neck. Ow! Will you not? On the Solar Busker King of Cups we can see the words Lucio Cecilio R. I searched and searched to find out who that was, but it could be anyone. What I did learn is that the chord cards in the Solar Busker can refer to all kinds of different characters from Roman and Greek history, including Alexander the Great. We talked about him in the video for the Two of Wands. The first entity that presents itself before our eyes is the microcosm, or the small world. Yep, that's the first thing that comes to mind when I look at that card.
The Hermetic title for the King and Knight of Cups is Lord of the Waves and the Waters.
King of the waves and the waters is obvious enough, although that does put him up against Neptune and Poseidon. I'm not sure who'd win in that battle. Other titles for the card are King of the Hosts of the Sea and King of the Nymphs and Undines, so this is the final card to feature the water fairies. Apparently these spirits control the weather and have the power to raise storms and cause shipwrecks, so maybe they could all gang up on Neptune. Before setting out on a voyage, it was common practice in ancient times to placate the spirits of the sea with a sacrifice.
Why are you looking at me like that?
No reason.
The King and Knight of Cups corresponds to the zodiac signs Aquarius and Pisces.
The Zodiac's favourite fish have returned, but this time they're in the company of Aquarius, bearer of the cosmic jug. We've not seen Aquarius since we studied the Star card back at 17 in the Trumps. This gives us that air and water combination that we've seen in all the core cards except for the Page, who gets a whole quarter of the Zodiac cake to himself because he's greedy. The card runs from 20 degrees Aquarius to 20 degrees Pisces, so once again the water sign is the dominant one. As we know, Pisces is the mutable sign of water and is associated with compassion, empathy and creativity. Despite the name, Aquarius is actually the fixed sign of air and corresponds with intellect, confidence and humanity. So all in all, we can see that when we put those two together, we get a pretty accurate picture of the King of Cups.
The King of Cups resides in the world of Briar and sits at the second Sephira of Chokhmah, together with the Two of Cups.
We're back at Chokhmah, where all the kings live alongside the twos. We talked last time about how the highest three Sephira constitute what's known as the supernal triangle at the very top of the tree. This is considered to be the archetypal world, which gives rise to the rest of the Tree of Life. According to S.L.Macgregor Mathers, I have already remarked that there is one trinity which comprises all the Sephiroth, and that consists of the crown, the king and the queen. We know that Keter means crown, and that the next two Sephiroth, Chokhmah and Binah, represent the masculine and feminine aspects of divinity. This is where the king and the queen both live. He goes on to say, it is the Trinity which created the world, or in Kabbalistic language, the universe was born from the union of the crowned king and queen.
The King of Cups herb is saw palmetto. This herb is said to increase muscles.
Oh, get a load of my guns!
But what does it all mean?
The King of Cups is a card of emotional balance, wisdom and creativity. When he appears in a reading, it can be telling you to approach a situation with emotional intelligence and understanding. Waite says fair man of business, law or divinity, responsible, disposed to oblige the querent, also equity, art and science, including those who profess science, law and art, creative intelligence. I've seen the arts come up quite a few times while I've been researching this one. Rachel Pollack suggests that as he's the king, we're referring to someone who's achieved some kind of mastery in the arts. She says in some context, especially the arts, the king takes on a very different meaning. Because he is the leader of the suit, he can symbolise success, achievement, mastery and maturity in artistic work. Crowley takes us on a slightly different journey for the Thoth card. He says he's quick to respond to attraction and easily becomes enthusiastic under such stimulus, but he's not very enduring. I'm not entirely sure what he's driving at there, but I'd like to disassociate myself from that description.
I'm not even here. Beware! An influential man wants to hurt you.
Eh? Why? I haven't done anything.
For a young lady, this card is the announcement of a forthcoming union with the young man she wishes to marry.
Hang on, how come she gets to marry Prince Charming while I've got Mr. Influential coming after me? When the king appears reversed, it can mean that all of that creative genius is being put to nefarious use. Waite says reversed, dishonest, double-dealing man, roguery, exaction, injustice, vice, scandal, pillage, considerable loss. Pillage is one of those words that I've heard often but never really understood. Apparently it means to rob a place using violence. I can't see the King of Cups doing that. Anyway, we're back with the conniving and double dealing. I don't know what's going on here. They've all been quite positive when they're the right way up, but whip them upside down and suddenly they all turn into John Dillinger. This can have a negative effect on the emotional aspects of the suit too, possibly resulting in an abusive relationship. Rachel Pollack says romantically, the King of Cups reversed can suggest a dishonest yet domineering lover, more often male, sometimes female. Crowley takes a slightly more moderate tone for the negative aspects of the Thoth card. He says when the card is ill-dignified, he's sensual, idle and untruthful. Yet with all this, he possesses an innocence and purity which are the essence of his nature.
In the reverse, it announces an unspecified displacement, a change of dwelling, a distant voyage.
Sounds like that trip to the Isle of Wight back on.
Yay!
Better find ourselves a sacrifice so we can appease the water nymphs. The big takeaway for the King of Cups is emotional intelligence, artistic mastery, and a perfect harmony between feelings and actions. Being in control of ourselves is an aspect that comes into play with all the kings, but perhaps none more so than the King of Cups. John Milton once said, "He who reigns within himself and rules passions, desires and fears is more than a king."
There's 10 minutes you'll never get back. Thank you for surviving through another barrage of twaddle here at Kippy's Quest. May the coming days bring you mastery and the creativity to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.